live. All right, we're going live. We're going live. Let me quickly check, make sure everything is coming through all nice here on the YouTubes. Yes, it is. Most fantastic. And I see that we've already got some conversations going on here in the chat. So let's already catch up with what you all have been saying. Let's see here. I'm so scared and giddy, y'all, and absolutely terrified and running amok with creative juices and jumping up and down, y'all. I mean, that is a fantastic feeling, and I do also understand how that can be spooky at times. And Doric's Adrian says, it's Delton time. Oh, yeah. It is most definitely Delton time. Or who is not excited at this point? I don't know who wouldn't be excited at this point. TV Account says, hi, how are we doing? Doing well. Sorry for being a little late, everyone. I just got back from being sociable at a barbecue. It's really good food. Document says, guess what? Game of Verse now has 25 million views. And the Amazing Digital Circus has a Fortnite collab. You know what? I'm not all that big on the Fortnite collab. Like, if Fortnite were still the overhyped game that it was, like, pre-2020, then that would be a little bit more remarkable, in my estimation. But still, it shows that the Amazing Digital Circus has had an impact on the zeitgeist, obviously. And yeah, Game of Verse now has over 25 million views. That puts it beyond Murder Drones at this point. I actually had to go back and change some stuff for the script for a Game of Verse video that I was doing because of how things have changed since I first wrote it up. So yeah, it's pretty great. T Account says, tried to catch the I Am Frank Elda release on Netflix, but didn't have the time yesterday. Oh man, I know the collab's crazy. The Pawnee Skin laughing. Wish you guys could see the movie. It deserves its flowers. I'm going to say followers. I think that if you've got Netflix, it should still be available. I've been seeing the advertisements for it over here, so it should be available on Netflix. Just got to go looking for it. Fire says Toby was straight up talking like extra detailed talk sprite. Chapter 4 Ralze in one part of the newsletter. Really, he was? Did you save us some barbecue? You know, if there were ways that I could teleport the food through the screen, I absolutely would. I've got a lot of watermelon left over. Hey, Wonder's here. Great to see you here. Wonder, hey guys, thought I'd be too tired for this, but I'm still awake. LOL. Well, thank you for dropping on by. And yeah, so there is a whole lot more to talk about tonight than I had originally anticipated last week when I said, okay, yeah, we're going to punt this on over to next week because just too much was going on. I was going to Fan Fusion with Scott. Wow. We got the announcement for Deltarune coming out now in just under 2 weeks. Holy cow. This is going to be fun. I am so excited. I need to complete another playthrough just to get myself all ready to go for the release. And nice thing is, I intend to have the first day of the release off, so I'm just going to dive right on in. Everything else can wait. Deltarune is waiting. Yes, it is. And if the newsletter is anything to go by, we're going to have some fun. One says, big news, reached my goal of selling 15 copies. Hey, congratulations. And Wonder, I finished reading the book. I need to send you my review and insights. So look forward to that. I'm going to try to get that to you as soon as I can. And congratulations again on selling 15 copies of your book. That is like for indie authors, diving straight on in, getting their first book sold. I don't think that Sandwich Desperados, which was my first book, I don't even think I've sold 15 copies of Sandwich Desperados yet. I've by now sold more than 15 copies of Knights of Halley Cruise over the years because I've taken it to book festivals, to book fairs, and sold it there. So wonder unless you've gone to a book festival to sell your books, if you're just doing this all online, again, congratulations. That's really good. Fabi says direct copy paste of it. In chapter 4, we saw dark clouds on the horizon. That's why let's not look there for now. Let's turn around and watch the sun before it goes down completely. Let's smile again. Let's have one more fun adventure. Okay? I could not unsee the almost crying. Look, I'm smiling Ralze face when I read that. Oh yeah. Yep. Chapter 5 is going to hit us hard. I am so here for it. And I called it that the festival would be a mix of Western and Japanese styles for the festival, like in terms of aesthetic and what it seems to be offering. I'm so excited. Y'all. Fabi, I wonder if that is Susie's line before they go into the fifth dark world. Oh, cool. Look forward to your thought. Oh, yeah, for the review. Look forward to your thoughts. Most excellent. No, it is honestly, Undertale, like take it as a success because you just released your book. And the thing is that most indie authors, unless they have large families and a large friend group who are just so eager and ready to support them and are going to buy like as many copies as possible, unless an indie author has that kind of a large network behind them when they go to release, most indie authors will not sell a whole lot. That's just the honest truth, because there's just so many other stories out there, and people look for name recognition, brand recognition, and when there's just a glut of content, when you are spoiled for choice, it's so easy for good stories, right? For news stories especially, to just get lost in the tumble of everything. Or says, if Chris, Susie, and Noelle in the party for the festival also. Yeah. So we've got the three: Noelle, Susie, and Chris. Chris in the lead as ever, and Noelle following behind, staring at Susie's tail. Oh, I am very, very interested in seeing how this all plays out. I've already done a theory video on how I think the festival could go down, and I'm still sticking to that. I'm still expecting absolute heartbreak by the end of the festival. If she's just staring at the tail. George says, I don't know if it'll actually happen, but it would make a good amount of narrative sense for Noelle to get rejected and go AWOL. I'm expecting, again, that we will see something like that. So we've been told, thanks to Gerson, that we can expect this next chapter, the field of pink and gold flowers burning with jealousy, to be our greatest obstacle yet. And obviously, like and especially once you've seen the sprites, like the trailer pretty much gave it away that we're going to be going into Asgore's dark world, because of all of the plant-based things everywhere. It's all incredibly plant-based. Now, granted, there's that Eastern influence, the Japanese influence, which already makes us turn and look over to Carol. But I really do think that this is going to be Asgore's dark world. We know that Asgore wants to get back together with Toriel. We know who Toriel was with the night before. And because this is a small town and no one's business is ever truly private in a small town, Asgore is going to find out. Jealousy will be burning. On top of that, because Noelle views what's going to happen at the festival as a date, there's those expectations there. And when those expectations are not met for one reason or another, things are going to go wonky. and there will be this will have an influence on Chris and Susie when they go into the dark world. And yeah, I'm a firm believer. I'm a firm believer that we are going to have the festival first, and then the dark world second. It would be very interesting if we had the dark world first and then the festival second, just because. Let's see here. Just because I feel like that would in a way would kind of be jumping the gun. On top of that, let's see if I can actually grab up the image from the newsletter. Let me see if I can get that, because the setting also seems to be at sunset, which the whole idea of like watching the sunset one last time before everything goes dark, it really does feel more of a dark world scenario, that we go in during the sunset, so we get that beautiful sunset aesthetic, and as the story progresses, it gets darker and darker and darker, leading us into the final 2 chapters. That's just aesthetically the way that I see things playing out. Granted, Toby Fox can tell this story however he wishes, but that's just the way that right now the way that I see things playing out. Okay, here's the image. We get Festival. Let me then bring that up here. We'll bring up the image. Hopefully it will load, because sometimes StreamYard doesn't allow me to bring up some images. Okay, so let me quickly catch up with some of you guys are saying here. It's so interesting that on YouTube you can clearly see the image. Weirdly enough, so on my end over here on StreamYard, I don't see a single darn thing. I'm glad, because I quickly popped over to YouTube. You guys should all be able to see it. I don't know why it works that way. StreamYard's weird. Tagaman says, I watched the trailer for a new Pixar film, Gato, and I'm so happy that Pixar got the Spider-Verse treatment. Now I'm going to watch Toy Story 5 next week. I also intend to see Toy Story 5. I don't have high hopes for it. So I'll just kind of see how it goes. Let's see here. Art says, I'm expecting Susie to force Chris and Noelle to hash it out, given what happened in Chapter 4 in her convo poking into the past with Chris and Noelle. Yeah, I think that is a real possibility. And if Toby does it right, I think that we might actually have a variety of possible outcomes at the festival, and that different ones will be what really enforces either the Snowgrave route or a more neutral route. It will actually be based on light world choices more so than dark world choices, as I think what's going to happen for this upcoming chapter. And Starlight Zero, hello. I'm wondering if Friend is going to be the Inferno of Jealousy. I don't think so, Starlight. I think that's going to be more motivated by Lightners, the Inferno of Jealousy. But I do not doubt that Friend will play a role in whatever's going on. We don't yet really know enough about Friend to really determine what exactly he is up to, and why he's doing what he's doing, or even how exactly he's doing what he's doing. But he's there. He's present. And that's the ominous thing. We are left so in the dark. And that's what makes him truly haunting. That's pretty good. Probably says, writing complexity. Do you think I want to know that better? I mean, I want to make pieces of work that includes such stuff such as mind control that doesn't make you forget what you did and leaves you with the guilt. Fabio, when we talk about writing complexity, I'll explain a little bit better what I mean by that. And we will definitely get to that, because in light of the video that I did about Hellfire, there's a conversation I realized that I didn't elaborate on as well as I should have in that video. So that's one of the reasons why we'll be talking about it tonight. So it says it'll be both, probably. Asgore's jealousy will consume everything, and Friend will be a secret boss. I would love for Friend to be a secret boss. That would be amazing, and that would be creepy, and I think it'd also be kind of overwhelming. Uh, oh man. Uh, Asgore's jealousy burns everything down into wells. Jealousy freezes all over. Ooh, I like that. I really like that. Now, real quick, before I continue reading what you guys have been putting here into the chat, I just want to bring up like the amazing fall, the amazing autumn look that we've got going on here in this image. And again, this looks like it's daytime. This looks like a daytime adventure. And Deltarune chapters have always wrapped up towards the end of the day. So in the daytime, we've got the festival going on. It's going to be great. It's going to be fun. And then whatever happens, what happens, and then whoop, we then start sliding on over to whatever Dark World shenaniganery there will be, and that will give us the sunset motif. And yeah, so that's what I'm expecting to happen. That's my working theory at the moment. The Flower King Dark World could be another distraction while Carol and Des does their thing. Could very well be the case. We know, so they've got to get their sacrifices. We've already got Undine selected as one sacrifice. Father Alvin was very likely the sacrifice for the Deltarune symbol, which means the last thing that we need is the pine tree. Now, wait just a moment here, because they need Noelle for their shenaniganery. Carol's not going to sacrifice herself, and Des is already very likely the knight. Well, we're operating on like a 99% surety for this, at least I am. So who's the other pine tree to go other than Dipper Pines, because we can't get Dipper Pines in there for this? I think we're going to see Rudy vanish, and that's horrifying. And you want to know what else? I think Rudy is going in willingly, which should already start raising eyebrows. But that's a theory to get into a little bit later. And then let's see here. Tiagan says, I think when the Amazing Digital Circus finale releases, we should analyze and interpret the tropes and shots used and what the show and the show's allegories and stuff. Oh yeah, absolutely. When it releases next week for the live stream, we will have just a long running discussion about what happened in that episode. We'll find the spoiler embargo will finally come on down. And I will say this. I intend to release a dedicated review video for the finale, but I'm not going to focus in that video so much on the events as I am the writing, like the actual nuts and bolts for the writing of that episode, because there is a real difference between the mechanics that Gooseworks used and how well or poorly they were used, as well as the message that Gooseworks is trying to get across. There is a difference. Gooseworks, in my opinion, succeeded with flying colors on one, and for the other, committed cardinal sins. Now, I will say that I will just end it right there, because if I go any further, we will go into spoiler territory. And again, spoilers will be only discussed once the episode premieres here on YouTube. Excuse me. Then TV says, I also think I have an idea for a future lesson. What are allegories and why they exist? You know what? I am already going to take that, and I am going to add that to our running list of lesson ideas. So hold on just a sec as I add that to my list. Say the next on the list will be verbal fights. And then the other one that you guys requested was how to do open-ended endings. And then a lesson on allegories. All right. Art says, the whole creation of these dark worlds seems to be in the express purpose of fulfilling the prophecy. I absolutely agree there. If Fabio says, my brain is ping-ponging between a flowy reference in this chapter being large or being more like earthbound flowers his design was based on. You know what? I would love to see a variation of Flowey in this chapter, and I would particularly love to see Nightmare Flowey be the iteration that we get. I would love that. Nightmare Flowey is my personal favorite. Art says, "Who wants to get some ice creams? Oh, I want some ice cream, even though I'm full with barbecue at the moment." Let's see here. Sorry says, expanding on the theory. Sorry, I need a second to explain. During the secret boss fight, Gerson says, Chapter 5, the field of pink and gold. I am honestly excited for Chapter 5. I would love in the opening of the chapter, Chris and Susie might confess their feelings. However, she learns Chris is working with the Knight. I'm just going to say this because I'm a cruisy shipper right here, Starlight. I would love for a cruisy confession this chapter. I think there is a chance. I don't know yet how much. Okay, because I've already said that. Let's commit. Let's commit to it here. There's a chance for a cruisy confession. I though am going to say this: the cruisy confession will not be something that every player is forced, and I say forced in that you just can't skip what's coming. I'm going to say that the cruisy confession is something that you're going to have to go looking for. And the reason why I say that is because nearly every major cruisy moment in game is something that you have to work towards. You have to work for it. You have to seek it out. The more that you explore the cruisy route, really, like, just the more we learn of Susie and the more that we learn of Chris, and it feels like we get the best of Chris when we pursue the cruisy route, which I just absolutely love. But the game is open to people's choices. Our choices do matter. And so I think that in a chapter where romance will play a potent role in the story, that there is a good chance for it. But it is going to be something that players are going to have to try to find. And by that very nature, it's going to purposely cause a rift in the fan base. Why? Because Toby's a troll and Toby's going to do it. So there's a good chance. There's a very good chance for a confession. If we don't get a straight up confession, I think that this chapter is still going to drop a cruisy bomb on us, and I can't wait. Okay, let's see here. Wonder's going to bed. Hey, Wonder, thank you so much for dropping on by, and I hope that you have a good night. Toby says, no, you can't mean not a divorce, rejection, beam struggle. Possibly. Wait a minute, Rudy? Well, dear, you're dying anyway, so you might as well be useful in the interest of maintaining the family. Yeah. Oh, no, not Rudy. Yeah. Yes, Rudy. I am also going to say this. I'm going to say this for the holidays. Rudy is in on it. Rudy is in on what is happening. I am pretty certain that Rudy has been helping Carol in Carol's shenaniganery. And I think that Rudy, I think that when we finally learn what Rudy's really been up to, it's going to be absolutely heartbreaking. And we're going to be like, dude, you are like the best of us and the worst of us all at the same time. Why would you go along with this crazy plan? It's because you love your family so much. Dang you, man. That's where I see that going. Five says, mad disappointed, maybe even distrust them to the level of her bully persona did, even if a moment if she finds out will be rough. Yeah, when Susie eventually finds out that Chris has been working alongside the Knight, it is going to be rough. And that will be Susie's ultimate hero moment. Because it's easy to, because here's the thing, even though a lot of the fights as the story goes on get harder and harder, Susie's great strength is in her ability to be a good friend. Which if you look at Susie from chapter 1 and even in chapter 2, you would never have expected that. But by golly, Susie is an amazing friend. That friendship, that power of hers will have to be tested. And I don't think we're going to see that test in chapter 5. I think we'll see that test in chapter 6. If not in chapter 6, it'll then obviously be in chapter 7. But I think it'll happen in chapter 6 because chapter 6 being the penultimate chapter will be the one that throws everything into absolute darkness. As far as like, oh my gosh, what the heck's going on here? Then Starlight says, this is why I kind of hope for Rudy Knight theory. Don't get me wrong, I love Death Knight. However, Susie might be less angry if she learns Rudy is trying to find Death. You know what? And I can see that. I can see why that would be the happier case. The finale is a mixed bag for sure, referring to Amazing Digital Circus. Yeah, I love the finale. I will also be objective enough to tell you that there were problems. That didn't ruin the story for me, but as writers, it's something for us to bear in mind going forward with our own stories. Opening all dark fountains to find his missing daughter. Or it says, I enjoyed it, but it does have its issues. Tagamu says, there is a new indie animation show called Sun Chaser, and it will be animated by Toon City Studio. I haven't heard about this. I gotta check it out. Starlight, honestly, I kind of 50-50 of Des and Rudy Knight. I get where you're coming from with that, Starlight. Dark Stage Dream says, I think any member of the Holiday family has plausible reason for being the knight, although my personal pick is Des. Ice cream? You're having a lot of opium right now, Lars. Hey, you know what? I am nothing if not a pessimistic optimist. Which whenever I say that drives my oldest sister up the wall. I'm a pessimistic optimist, or better yet, I'm a realistic romantic. Maybe that's the better way of putting it. I'm a realistic romantic. You can never stop me from aiming for the more romantic or romanticized or just rose-tinted version of things, but I will be one of the very first to be all like, yep, that was bad, or that sucks, or this is not going to turn out well. Chris is ready to follow Susie at the end of chapter 4. Chris is really teetering on the brink here. The main crux of the story is the relationship between these two, so something is going to happen. Absolutely it will. Dorcas says, if I find out Rudy knew everything the whole time, I will not be okay. Please, Toby, not the goofy rain dad. Hey, we got Guy here. Great to have you here, Guy. Hello, Lars. How's it been? It's been good. It's been a very busy day. I'm so behind on so many things I got to do, but it's been a good day. Fabia says, Sonic Forces, Silver the Hedgehog. I may be an optimist, but I'm also a realist. Exactly. All right, so we've already had a chance to talk about Deltarune. I think there's still so much to say in regards to Deltarune. But what do you guys think? I'm going to give you guys an option right here about what exactly we talk next. Talk on next. So do we want to continue talking Deltarune for now or kind of put a pin in it? Do we want to talk about writing complexity? And again, this will take us jumping on over to my video that I did about Hellfire and talking a little bit about that, revisiting the discussion that, as I said, I feel like I didn't do quite the justice it needed in the video. There's also, I think, a very serious discussion that we should have about what the box office for the Amazing Digital Circus means. I recently watched a really interesting video, and I'm not sure if I necessarily want to be a person who does like a full reaction to this other person, because there's a lot of things I fundamentally disagree with her about, but I think that she makes a really good argument that we need to actually take and kind of drop at the feet of the box office discussion. So we can have that serious discussion for the Amazing Digital Circus. We can talk complexity in writing. We can talk more Deltarune, or we can get to talking about more scene management with Pirates of the Caribbean, the Curse of Black Pearl. So I kind of leave that up to you guys, what you feel you really want that you feel that you really want to talk about. What should we do? And as I wait to hear about what you guys have got to say, uh, let's see here. Uh, so it says Carol and Knight could just be doing something gray, something morally gray and not evil. And here's the thing: is that I kind of agree with that. I think that bringing back Des, which I believe is really ultimately the goal, that is not inherently a bad thing, but it is a morally gray issue because it means bringing about the end of the world, which is never a good thing. I'm sorry. Uh, unless you're God and in control of everything, it's not a good thing to bring about the end of the world. Guys, honestly, I was marginally disappointed by the finale. The Amazing Digital Circus' strength was always its characters, and I felt like the arcs were a bit expedited for it to feel satisfying. And Guy, you make an excellent point. And again, that's something I want to get into the discussion of once the finale has finally premiered, because there are definitely some things that we need to talk about in regards to what happened with the characters. There were choices made that I agree with, and other choices where I'm like, I do not agree with this. And other choices where I'm just like, oh, Gooseworks, oh no, why? Why did you choose that? Because it goes against writing theory, and it's not the kind of theory where you're all, because people say rules are meant to be broken, but there are certain rules of writing that if you try to break, that if you decide you're going to break them, it is almost always to your detriment. I only know of a handful of stories that have pulled off one of the rules that she broke, uh, that that actually have worked, and they are in the vast minority. Ooh, boy. At the same time, I left the theater smiling. I had a really good cathartic cry on my way back home, and I felt so glad that I got to see it. So it's like the storytelling for me, like emotionally, was right where it needed to be. The mechanics, Gooseworks, we gotta talk some things over. But that'll be next week. Darkest Daydream says votes for more Deltarune talk. So we got to vote. We got to vote for Deltarune. Speaking of Deltarune and religious themes, I'm starting to wonder if the chapters of the game allude to the 7 days of creation in the Bible. Possibly. I personally actually wouldn't see it as one of the as the 7 days of creation. You could probably say more the seven seals of the Revelation of Armageddon. Um, and then Sarah says, I don't know. There is a lot of religious allegory, like the angel, and treat Deltarune like a religion. There are also a couple of verses in the text that bring to mind the events of each Deltarune chapter. So it says Digital Circus episode 9 is good, but does not reach its full potential. Yep, Tiger says Backrooms now has 226 million worldwide. Well, hallelujah! Congratulations to Backrooms. That's really, really good. Guy says, really, I think the series would have benefited from more episodes, and I rarely say things like that. Yes, 100%. Amen. They needed more episodes. It needed more episodes to really pull off what the finale did. So yeah, we will discuss that again next week. TV account, didn't she say the show was character focused? But the lore being so vague caused the fandom to make out control theories and the CNA company and why things are the way that they are. Here's one of the things that Gooseworks did is that Gooseworks here, since we're just talking so much Gooseworks right now, we'll just quickly pop on over here to footage from the Amazing Digital Circus. Gooseworks was writing a horror. It's a horror story. It doesn't feel that way for a lot of the time because there's so much goofiness and whatnot going on. It is a horror story. It's an existential horror story. And as such, it's not about trying to scare you with monsters or some really crazy lore reveal. It is all about the characters. As such, then the lore can be way more vague. The thing is that yeah, the last episode, again, mechanics wise, really suddenly went into overdrive on the lore, and that created an imbalance. A lot is still left unsaid, a lot is still left up to interpretation, which I really enjoy for this kind of a story, but but again, it's a juggling act. With only 9 episodes, even with a movie-length finale, it still wasn't enough. I agree with Guy, it needed more episodes, especially episodes to help set up certain things, especially given some of the reveals that we get halfway through the episode. Holy cow! They were amazing, and they broke rules in ways that were a detriment. And again, I will hold off on fully explaining that for when we actually have that discussion. Dork Sage says, there's also the fact that we have a human living among non-human creatures in areas surrounded by trees, and there's a theory that Susie could be half human. I have not really subscribed to that theory. I feel like that one's really come out of nowhere. I know a lot of people enjoy it. We'll see. We'll have to wait and see. Starlight says, okay, now here's the real question. Who is the angel? There are a lot of people who believe it is the player, but I think it's more of an eldritch being that the heroes might have to face or know well. And so, Starlight, to what you just said, so what you wrote there, Chapter 4 already gives us an incredible clue that a star fell from the heavens, could not return, and leaked until it created a river of tears like glass. Once we know that, like, wait a second, we have a star that fell from the heavens that weeped glass. Okay, so we got some of those. We've got those. We've got the dark crystals, the dark shards, which are very likely something that come from the weeping star. All of the save points are stars. The whole idea of, well, like how hope shines within you like a star. It never says like a star, but the animation is like a star, and the Titans are like stars. They've got a star element about them. All of it comes back to a star. I think that the angel is a monstrosity that is going to be all star related. I think that that's what we're going to find. The clues have just all been there so far. The Digital Circus episode 9 just needed an extra half hour to explain the lore better. Won't spill anything else, but it is good, but could have been better and did not reach its full potential. It could even be a realistically depicted creature, so the angel, that is never really met in person at all, with no proof of its physical presence, except that we get a depiction of it. We just don't see it. We just see Susie reacting to it very badly. Dorcas says, and the apple scene from Noelle's blog, Susie tossed the apple to Chris, and Eve gave the forbidden fruit to Adam. I think that might be reading a little bit too much into it. Just going to say, I think that that's way more of just, again, the connection of Chris loves apples. Susie's wanting to take a bite out of Chris, and that Susie doesn't trust anyone who won't eat or spit. And here is the object of all her bullying, taking a bite of the apple where she bit. It's like, wait a second, the kid I'm bullying should be like scared of me, should be angry at me, and there they are, eating the apple right where I hate it. They say my spit. No, and then of course we don't know what Chris whispered to Susie, but woo. So I think that's far more about like the interpersonal connections and struggles of those two characters. What we see playing out there in that blog blog entry. Tivion says, I think people would have a problem about the ending. Was what they expect everything to be confirmed canon, or have all questions answered and explained? Yeah, no, that was never going to happen. I went into the Amazing Digital Circus expecting for most of my questions to not be answered. I got way more answered than I thought. And I understand why a lot of people will be upset. They're like, I want all my questions answered. That's not this kind of story, buddy. Guy says, that's all because I love the idea and the concept of what could have been. If the pace was slowed down to really add in that flavor, it would have had a bigger impact, I feel. Dark Sage Dreams responds to Starlight. I was talking with a mutual about the angel in a cruisy server, and he gave me a lot of evidence for it being Susie. Interesting. You have to share that evidence. I'd be interested in reading that. Lars, you're making the original Star Walker an actual possible angel candidate. Yes. Yes, indeed. So it says, honestly, it could be Susie, but I am so scared if it is her. However, Susie does play an important role in the prophecy, so it could be. If Star Walker is the final boss, I will lose it. If Star Walker is the final boss, we are all in trouble. All right, let me take a drink of water here, and I also got to let a cat out. Doop-a-doop-a-doop. Yeah, I know. You want to go and have dinner. Go forth and be free, fat cat. All righty. There goes the cat. She hath been released. Now then, so since we're still talking chapter 5, let me bring up the newsletter, and we'll have a read through it right here. All right. So, sorry to keep you waiting. Deltarune Chapter 5 will launch simultaneously worldwide on all platforms on June 24th at 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. For more information, check Deltarune.com. I'll send another newsletter when it's out. Here's the announcement trailer if you missed it, which was so good. I want to surprise people playing the chapter for the first time, so I avoided showing the most exciting moments, which is the opposite of what you should do in a trailer. But it's exactly what good trailers, I think, do. They give you something that makes the story sound really interesting, and then lets you discover all of its best parts for yourself. By the way, the trailer was made by Everdread. The trailer music was also performed and arranged by Carlos Ian. Got that wrong. And the art was by Temi. What kind of chapter is Chapter 5? In Chapter 4, we saw dark clouds on the horizon. That's why let's not look there for now. Let's turn around and watch the sun before it goes down completely. Let's smile again. Let's have one more fun adventure, okay? In my opinion, it fits well in the overall story of the game. So, here, Insane in the Rain. Insane in the Rain. That's what I just should have said. So thinking then about what Chapter 5 could deliver to us, beyond what I've already said with the festival about how someone's heart is going to get broken and everything, when we look at the briefest glimpses that the trailer gives us, again, it's very clear that we're going into some flowery world. Very likely it's going to be Asgore's Dark World. And we also have a very Eastern theme, very Japanese theme, also throughout it. And what I think, Deltarune exactly 10 days after my birthday. Well, happy early birthday to you, Fabio. What I think we can expect going into Chapter 5 is that we are going to get, I think, some of our best, toughest fights thus far, and not just in terms of the boss fights, but I also think in terms of just like the regular fights that we might just come across throughout the game. The level of intricacy given to so many of these sprites and their actions, at least from what we can see in the trailer, just it has such a level of fun and depth that it's hard to imagine Toby Fox not just going all out, that just going all out crazy with some of these fights, with the different patterns that you have to follow, special kinds of rules in order to interact, and so there's that. I feel like this chapter is going to come across as way more hands on and artistic than any of the other previous chapters. But on top of that, I think that this chapter is going to have a whole lot to do with the past. And one of the reasons why I say that is not just simply because we're going to look into the story of Asgore, and we're very likely going to find out more about him and Toriel, because there's been a lot about Asgore and Toriel and their story that's been sprinkled throughout so far. Deltarune Chapter 5 along, Chapter 5 in 11 days. I was very, very tempted to just title this as Deltarune in 12 tomorrows or 11 tomorrows. In any case, but I think that we're going to, though, learn a whole lot more just about the past in general, not only because we need it from the standpoint of we have to better understand the story in order for us to truly recognize and appreciate the personal stakes involved for these characters, but also because Asgore is an individual who is perpetually stuck in the past. He's stuck in the past for what he wants his family to be, how his family once was, especially how his wife once was. And we know that he's been preserving the flowers. The flowers are a symbol of the past. It would be very, very neat if the flowers are things that we actually have to find throughout the story, throughout the chapter. And as we interact with the flowers, we get information about the past. And thanks to the optional mini boss fight that you can have with Miss Mizzle in Chapter 4, we know that there is a blue flower that we can interact with in the next chapter. Now, I believe that that flower will provide information about Des and Azrael. My reasoning for thinking that, as I stated in another video, is because we've already gotten a lot of details about Azrael and Des, two characters that the fan base shipped together, even though, as many people point out, they've not even been seen on screen together, except for once, in Tenna's flashback. Everything that we know about their interactions is secondhand. So there's a lot that we just don't know. But the reason why I feel that we're going to learn more about them is because in that fight with Miss Mizzle, it's all about it's treated as a knight courting a lady, or a knight trying to win a lady's favor. It feels out of place within the greater context of everything else that's happening in Chapter 4. Yes, I know we got the Cuptans running around with the Mizzles and everything right there. So it's kind of been built up, but just the intensity that Miss Mizzle brings to that conversation or that particular topic of a knight and a lady, and how a knight is supposed to treat a lady. It feels, with everything that we know about Des and Azrael, and how Des liked the sword magician or the sword knight, and we just get these hints that Azrael went from really liking the green lizard, aka Yoshi, and really began liking the sword magician, who was Des's favorite character. I wonder why. All of this is granted conjecture. I should say, granted, it is conjecture. But I feel like if we hunt down that blue flower in Chapter 5, we are going to learn a little bit more about Des and Azrael in some kind of way. Will it be like a grandiose explanation that gives the full context and understanding of their story? I don't think so. It'd be really nice if you got it, but in one way or another, I feel like we're going to learn more about their dynamic. And because again, the theme of chapter 5 has been set up to be that of romance and of jealousy, I think we're going to find out through interacting with that blue flower. We're going to learn a little bit about romantic tension between those two, and probably an event that did not go very well, and that might not have gone down very well for Azrael and Des. Now, what could that be? Because it's a blue flower, because the whole thing of a knight courting a lady, it was probably a dance. Why do I say that? Because we have a big dance coming up. We've all been focused on the festival, but there's a dance coming. So I expect that we're going to learn about the past through interacting with flowers. And I think the big flower to keep an eye out for is the blue flower that was already hinted at in chapter 4, and that flower will give us some insights into Des and Azrael, while all the other flowers or all the other insights into the past are going to be very focused on Asgore and how Asgore views the family. Storminger says, we better find their secret makeout spot just because I want to make Chris squirm from embarrassment. It's possible. It's possible we might find something. So it says, I think Des might have saw Chris prank Noelle, and Des got so angry she hit Chris with a wiffle bat too hard and cracked, which results in Azrael no longer being December's friend, or at least having some real tension between them. We know that Des hits Chris over the head with a bat once. The thing is that Noelle in chapter 2 shares a memory of going into the woods with Des, Azrael, and Chris and not having a good time, coming out crying and everything. And that Des used Azrael's jacket to wipe her nose. So we also know that they had gone on adventures together. We're missing the full details there. It's very likely that these were Dark World adventures that they were going on. And it's in any case, we know that there were already adventures that were going on with those four. There were some tensions. I think that the real tensions are going to be those. They're going to be those that are romantic in nature, especially because, well, Caddy claims to have taken Azrael's. Let's see here. No, it was. Wait, who was it that took Azrael's first kiss again? It was Braddy. Braddy took Azrael's first kiss, and then Caddy was the one they took to the dance and dumped a whole bunch of punch all over him, which got Toriel really mad. The thing is that around that time, this feels like unless the incident with the shelter went down way earlier than I was expecting, it kind of then implies that it would imply that. Sorry, my tired thoughts are getting all jumbled up here. Slow down, Lars. It kind of would then imply that Des was jealous of Braddy and Caddy getting so close with Azrael. It's kind of what I expect being the case. All right, so I know people have been saying a whole lot of stuff here. Let me quickly just zippity-doo-dah, zippity-day on through here. Do you remember the thank you section for the Spamton sweepstakes? Only vaguely, I'm Omega. I only remember that vaguely. Very good cake coming up for me. Oh, yes, good cake. Hey, enjoy your birthday. Des and Azrael 100% liked each other, or she had a one-sided crush while she stole his retainer. And not just his retainer, but like everything else. Watch Des be the flower this time around. Oof. Oh, my heart's not ready for Des to be the next Flowey. Just remember Murder Drones, and may I say, being tired does not benefit the viewing experience of shows, especially this show. Thankfully, I only got really tired around the last 2 episodes. As Fire Fun Times, it was a pretty enjoyable experience. One of my favorite dialogue was a poorly trimmed boy and a messy and unfocused girl. Oh, man, that was That was a hard one. So beautiful and so sad. One of my favorite, and then Dark Sage Room says, where YouTube randomly doesn't allow those much. I didn't actually like Murder Drones. My first watch, only watched the first and didn't finish it. Oh, come on, guy. You got to get all the way through Murder Drones. Guy says, Firefun says to the guy, no, I get it. I took a few watches to actually finish it. I had to rewatch it a bit before I actually finished it. I just remember only getting to episode 4 and then just stopping. Starlight says, if you go into her room, we saw December's bat actually being cracked, so she definitely was angry with Chris. Oh, yeah, it happened. Firefun Time says, Murder Drones is rough on first viewing, but much better on further watches. I mean, that's one way to view it. I love Murder Drones from beginning to end, but that's just me. It's definitely a subjective thing, what people like and what they don't like. I think the most important thing is that when you say that you don't really like something, rather than, this is something that we could all work on doing better, is that you don't turn it immediately towards something antagonistic, but you explain why. And it's one of the reasons why almost all of my reviews for the Rings of Power are an hour or more long. Why? Because I take my time to give it the benefit of the doubt before I, as a Tolkien fan, take that show and roast it over the coals and flay it alive, because it's a horrible show. And I can objectively prove that. But at the same time, I will give it the benefit of the doubt before tearing it apart. And I've done that for every episode of the Rings of Power. Don't believe me? You can watch my reviews. It says, I did end up stopping episode 3, but starting over with the dub version at my mom's side. All right. Let me take a drink of water here, guys. Good water. Okay, let's see here. Bump it up. So yeah, I feel like chapter 5 is going to deal a lot with things that happen in the past. I think that the flowers are going to be very important because Asgore has preserved them this whole time. We've gotten many references to them, so I feel like they're going to be big. And the whole jealousy thing, again, coming back to the events all happening in hometown. Excuse me. A lot of that jealousy will probably be coming over from Asgore, while at the same time, I feel that some of that jealousy will also be made manifest by what other characters have done in the Dark World, and how that affects Chris and Susie coming on over back to the Dark World. Because just remember this, in chapters 3 and 4, and even actually also in chapter 2, a lot of what is happening and developing in the light world is brought over by Susie into the Dark World, and how she interacts with people, how she tries to understand things that are going on, her motivations for looking into different elements of these various Dark Worlds. All of that is inspired by what's happening in her life in the light world. So again, this is why I kind of think that the events of the fair will probably happen first in chapter 5, because of whatever jealousy shenaniganery goes down in chapter 5 will then be carried on over into the Dark World by our heroes as they try to understand all of this. I'm Omega says, in the thank you section, there is a part where you input how long it took for her, aka Noelle, to smile, and is believed to be for the weird route. Ooh, very interesting. The dialogue in Murder Drones sometimes is very weird and confusing. It's bizarre sometimes, really, but it's not awful. The pacing is weird, though. Yeah, the pacing overall is really weird. The dialogue is Liam. It's just Liam talking, which, if you like the way that Liam does stuff, is totally fine. If you have a hard time with the way that Liam talks, or the way that Liam likes to express himself, then yes, it's going to be a slog. Wait, oh yeah, Darkners that have been there for a long time end up being a larger thing, more important, and let's all remind ourselves, Asgore vents to his flowers. Yep. Oh boy, those flowers. And I think it was Arts pointed out to me that we already get to see in the trailer for Chapter 5, animation straight out of Undertale, with the way how the blades dance around, and in that particular shot, it's just Chris, which could mean that which it might be like a little Chris side quest, like what we've gotten in some of the other chapters, or could possibly be the Snowgrave routes playing out there. We'll just have to see. We'll be finding out here very soon. Then Fire Fun Time says, I feel like things are communicated very weirdly sometimes in the dialogue, and they just speak weirdly sometimes. Guy says, it looks amazing. I really like the animation art style, but that only goes so far for me. He says, it sprung back in December after the initial responders received an email giving us another chance to answer. And after the trailer, we got a third prompt asking where she will smile again. Ooh, man, that's ominous. Tiger says, I will have high hopes that Murder Drones will get a sequel series. I don't see that happening. Just going to say. If it does happen, I hope it does really well. I just don't know. I just don't see it. Now, granted, we haven't heard anything from Liam, and there's a lot of other things that are probably happening behind the scenes over at Glitch Productions. We're just going to have to see how things play out. And in that regard, we will likely hear, again, I said that once the Amazing Digital Circus has premiered and it's had 2 weeks to have its merch run, that we will then hear about Gameoverse being greenlit. Gameoverse now with over 25 million views. Yeah, there's like at this point, unless the merch sales are absolutely in the toilet because the global economy isn't all that great right now. If that's the case, then it might take longer. But I honestly think that given the incredible reception that's received, how it has now actually outstripped Murder Drones in terms of views and popularity, that there is a very, very good chance that we will hear in about 3 weeks' time the green light announcement for Gameoverse. And especially with all of the extra funds that Glitch Production now has, thanks to the box office success that the Amazing Digital Circus has been enjoying. All right. I don't know how much this is true versus an excuse. I've seen someone say that certain ways the drones act and talk are still sometimes imitations of how humans did it. Blatant, actively describing feelings robotically, something like that. My favorite part of Murder Drones was seeing V's progression throughout the series and seeing her become a hero. Yeah, see, it's hard. I will say this: it's hard for me to really classify V as a hero. I see V as personally, I see V as a far more tragic figure in Murder Drones, because as we find out by the end, she has. I mean, it becomes like it's clear in the penultimate. Actually, no, it's episode 6, I believe. Yeah, it's episode 6 where we finally get like a really good nod that no, she's always cared about him. And granted, episode 5 does itself also deliver pretty strongly on that. But it was always hard to tell because it was a manipulated memory. So how much did she actually love N? But by the end of the show, you realize everything that V's been doing, she's been doing for N, and she just did it wrong. And that's why she's lost N. And that's incredibly tragic. It's beautiful and tragic. Oh. All right. One guy says, I wonder if Glitch can see this as an opportunity to look for artists that want to make movies now. There's a real possibility, and I would love to see that be the case. But movies and shows are two very different things. And whatever movie is made by Glitch, it it won't do as well as a show would unless they are pulling in a big name. That is pretty much how that will go. Because with the show, like one of the reasons why the Amazing Digital Circus has done so well is because all the work that the show has already made or has already done. So you have tens of millions of fans across the globe who all want to support this. And that gave it a real boost at the box office. If Glitch, let's say for instance, this is an absolute fantasy right here. This ain't going to happen. But let's say that Glitch reached out to me tomorrow. Now, granted, none of you would ever hear about this because I would be under an NDA. I would not be allowed to talk about it. And the fact that I am talking about it, it's not going to happen. But if Glitch were to suddenly reach out to me and be like, "Hey, Lars, oh man, we love what you're saying about indie creations, indie animation, and like we've looked into some of your books, and man, we just love what you're doing here, pal. So how about you pitch to us a show idea and or not show idea, a movie idea. You will get your very own team of 20 animators, and you can make your story happen. What idea do you have for us?" And like I could use, for instance, Miss Ventures and be like, "Okay, everyone, on an indie budget, we are basically going to copy Don Bluth's style, and we are going to make a high fantasy, dark comedy in the sewers of post-apocalyptic New York. An adventure of a mouse, a rat, and a cat going on an epic quest to find a dragon in order to help them beat an army of dogs that are oppressing this poor little village of mice." And so, boom, there's your idea. I throw out the characters, their arcs, everything that's supposed to happen, the jokes, the romances, the action, the comedy, and I lay it all on out. Well, here's the thing. Even if Glitch is like, "Fantastic, Lars, here's $2 million to make that movie happen," uh, and I'm like, "Oh, yay, joy that be. This is going to be like an hour long movie, maybe an hour 20 minutes if we really stretch it." So Glitch Productions is behind the making of Misventures, a dark comedy in the sewers of post-apocalyptic New York City. Okay, fine. Glitch is behind it. People will already be interested because of that, but only a handful of people like you guys and gals know me. There is no big name recognition for Lars Jensen to pull in thousands to tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands or even millions of people. And while there are millions of Glitch fans who would be happy to support anything that Glitch does, there will always be a certain amount of skepticism because they just don't know me. They don't know my storytelling. They don't know my particular story. They might pick up one of the books I've written that is not the great one that inspired Kevin and Luke to reach out to me. Maybe they read one of my less well written books and are like, "This guy's stupid. I'm not going to go see a movie made by him." And so then that $2 million might never get recouped, which would then mean a loss for a company that, even though Glitch has been doing very well, Glitch cannot afford massive financial losses. So, as amazing as it would be to see Glitch bring a bunch of indie animated movies to the big screen, and believe you me, I would love to see that happen. Right now, Glitch does not have the infrastructure to make that happen. And if they really wanted to make that happen, they would need to pull in big names that could help bring in more and more people who'd be interested in seeing an untested movie or an untested storyteller, since this is still all indie animation. So, yeah, I would not say that we can expect very soon lots of indie movies to suddenly start showing up produced by Glitch and by other small companies. I don't see that happening. Instead, what Glitch has been doing is a major step forward to getting big backer recognition that will allow them in the future to pursue such goals. But it will still be incrementally. We're not going to jump to the dream immediately. And Gaster, the royal scientist. Hello. Great to have you here, Gaster. I'm expecting to see you show up in chapter 5. I know you won't. You're going to be hiding behind a tree somewhere, but I love that. I love to see that. Fire Fun Time says the people expected Glitch to make more money at the box office truly don't know how much money that is and how good that is for all their projects. I'm very happy with the money they're getting, and the more they will get, the more money they can dip into each of their projects. Amen. Exactly. So I says, yeah, Glitch does best creating TV shows, and I think they should only make a select few movies if the shows are extremely popular. And I think that that's the route that they're going to go down. There's a very good chance that Gameoverse can maintain the high numbers that it's already been bringing in just about a month's worth of runtime. There's a good chance that Gameoverse could find itself with a movie. That would be amazing. I would absolutely love that if the story continues to do well. Guy says they'd have to be a lot of money and good strategies in place of a movie's under consideration. I was just speaking in the optimist view, which I never do. Well, having that big dream is never a bad thing. And honestly, I would love to see more indie movies, especially indie animation movies, make it to the big screen. There is a market for that. And if done well, it can be sustainable, and it can be very good for a lot of fans of indie animation, and obviously for their creators as well. But it would have to be so well managed to make it work. And really, we're just getting started. That's the thing. Like, I've seen a lot of people like, "Oh, we're in the golden age of indie animation." Other people like, "We're leaving," and I'm like, "No, no, 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 no. We're in a renaissance. We're in a period of transformation. We don't yet know where this will end. But so far, there's a lot of very positive signs that this transformation will lead to bigger and better things. Now, what that looks like on the other end, no one knows. And even the visionaries who are pushing us forward, they have no power over how it will turn out. So there's a philosophical discussion for you. But let's see here. I think after about an hour's worth of a lot of Deltarune talk, what do you guys think? Because we keep jumping on over to the Amazing Digital Circus. What do you say that we switch gears and start talking about the box office? I need to take a drink of water here. And I definitely want a Deltarune show set in the medieval era where Chris is adopted by the Dreamer family and by their kingdom fighting an evil human empire. That would be amazing. I would absolutely watch that. That would be awesome. I am here for it. I am here for that fan fiction. We are here for the money. All right. Then let us jump on over to the Amazing Digital Circus. Medieval Rune? Oh, I'm here for Medieval Rune. I am so here for Medieval Rune. Okay. So let me quickly look up something here about the box office. And it's so interesting to see the discrepancy in box office numbers. And like, for instance, Box Office Mojo. Let's see if they've updated it. Box Office Mojo finally has updated the entire run to match what Glitch is saying. So they say that as of yesterday, that the Amazing Digital Circus, the last act, has pulled in $37 million worldwide. Round of applause. That is amazing. Absolute congratulations to Gooseworks, to her team, to Glitch, to everyone over at Glitch Productions, to all the fans who made this possible, to all the people behind the scenes who will never have their names celebrated. They are the absolute heroes. This is incredible. Not only is it the biggest release for an indie animation at the theaters, and it's been in a limited run, no less, but this is huge for Glitch Productions. Now then, I discussed in my previous video on this topic that based on what I've been able to find about how Fathom Events runs things, and just knowing how foreign theaters take a little bit more than what you would expect for an American chain taking. You're looking at Glitch bringing home anywhere between 40 to 50% of the overall box office of the entire box office take, and so like in a best case scenario, they're bringing home $16.5 million. Not even 18.5 million dollars, which is amazing. $18.5 million. I wish I had that money. That would be absolutely life changing. And it is life changing for everyone over at Glitch. And I so hope that Gooseworks is getting a bonus of that. She deserves it. And it would also be some nice compensation after all the bullying that's been thrown her way. But in any case, let's say that they get that $18.5 million. It will probably be less, and especially after taxes. Oh, glorious taxes! I've had theirs say it's obviously going to be way less than 18.5. But even if, like, let's say we talk about, okay, taxes eats up a huge chunk of that, and then of course there are all the other things that they need to take care of in terms of making sure that their workers are taken care of, legal fees are paid. There are probably also debts that have been taken out in order to finance a lot of these shows to a certain degree. That means now that debts can be paid off, the workers can be properly taken care of completely, legal fees can be paid, taxes will be filed, along with all of that stuff. And let's say that process is absolutely brutal and eats up more than half of that. So they brought home $18.5 million. And now, after all the rest of that stuff, they're looking at maybe $7 million. I know that sounds absolutely ridiculous. Like, where on earth would all those other costs go? Who knows? But I'm just saying, like, because I said I'm the realistic romantic, the pessimistic optimist. We're just going to say that taxes, legal fees, everything else just ate up a whole bunch of that profit. So Glitch Productions is looking at bringing home roughly around $7 million after everything is said and done, which is still incredible. At a roughly $300,000, most likely per episode for any of their shows that they make, when you start spreading that out, that means that on a budget of $300,000 per episode, that means that they can fund more than 20 episodes across all of their shows. That is pretty awesome. Now then, they still will focus on making sure that all of their shows can be funded by merchandise sales and by ad revenue on YouTube. But now they have an absolute buffer and blanket to take care of the difference if things just don't line up the way that they had hoped for any episode of any of their shows. And because we haven't really gotten very long shows for any of the new stuff from Glitch Productions, there's a very, very good chance that they can spread that $7 million out across all of their shows to make sure that all of their shows are completely, fully funded, and that they even still have extra at the end of the day, once they add in merchandise sales and ad revenue, that they can then go ahead and start working on other shows as well. All of that is so incredibly good. It's good because it keeps dozens and dozens of people employed. It keeps loads of indie fans satisfied with work coming on out, and it empowers a certain number of creators to tell their stories the way that they would want to, whereas without all of that money coming to them, they really wouldn't be able to. They could still tell their stories, but not to the same level that they can tell it when they are fully funded by a company like Glitch. So all of this is incredibly good. All of this is very positive, and this kind of a success at the box office is something that can be leveraged by Kevin and Luke to even have connections or to forge connections with other studios in Hollywood. That is important because, as Savory Sif is showing with her project Tales of Zales, is that if you really, really want a project to take off, and this is actually also even being done by Critical Role, the people at Critical Role with their shows, and also with Wakfu Season 5. These are all instances of basically smaller studios or independent studios proving to big investors that their projects are worth it. Bringing a good argument and bringing already a good war chest of funds to get the show going, and basically telling the big studios, if you want a slice of the pie, you will sit at the table with us. All you have to do is give us the money. We do the work, and then you reap the profits. And basically, that is the model that will be the most sustainable for indie animation going forwards. Now, that also begs the question, is it independent anymore? Well, that's what Glitch has been working on. They've been working on ways to set precedents where big companies like Netflix will show their stuff without any interference. If that precedent works, if it brings in money, then other creators will be able to follow that same pattern and create a system where the independent creators have, again, their full autonomy to tell the stories the way that they want them to be told, while receiving money from big studios, and the big studios get a big chunk of the pie, making it worth their while. So it's a win-win-win-win-win for everyone involved, from creators to companies to the artists to the fans. That is the dream. And that is what I believe that Glitch is working towards, to make that sustainable. But in order to make that sustainable, you need to have the goods. You need to have the receipts. And the Amazing Digital Circus is the first big step towards that. So that is what's at stake here. But this then leads us into a much bigger conversation that it needs to be had. And I'll need to pull up this particular YouTuber so that way I can then share with you guys what at least her channel, her video, and so that way you can check out what she's got to say. And I'll provide my own insights and a little bit of a counter to her. Now, we here at Camille's Harem, we're not really a reacts channel, but this is, I think, part of a greater conversation that needs to be had, especially in light of what Glitch Productions is trying to do. Now, let me quickly catch up with some things you guys are saying right here before we then jump over to having that particular part of the conversation. And sorry that my voice is. Say we'll have to. I'm going to have to keep an eye on how things are going here with this, because my voice is going. You can probably hear how it's becoming a little bit scratchy, but whew. There you go. Comcrest says, honestly, I think the Amazing Digital Circus suffered from being an amateur show. Gooseworks was inexperienced. There are some things in retrospect, I think certain things in the show have created a wrong set for the audience, made worse by the long wait between episodes. And there's definitely an argument to be made there for that. Fire Fun says, I think glitch is going to get really going with these episodes the next year, later this year, especially since Gaslight, Gamerverse, and Guinevere all have different teams. I think the shows are going to really get going. Especially Gaslight District, because the Gaslight District has been in the works now without anything new for a while. So, and from what I understood, is that they really want to be able to crank those episodes out, so that way we can get more of the Gaslight District way quicker without having the long wait times. Excuse me. So that is what I think that they're aiming for there. The Amazing Digital Circus has lots of good stuff, but did it really need to have a series-wide foreshadowing with Abel in the background, subverted by making an adventure and fake then? Commoncraft, I think we had a little bit. Oh, Commoncraft, we're dropping some spoilers right there. Sorry, I am going to quickly delete that. Sorry, Commoncraft. It's not that I don't like what you got to say right there, but we are not going to have any spoilers here in the chat. Guy says I can never see you guys as a React channel. You guys don't do the YouTuber faces, point the red arrow on the thumbnails. LOL. Yeah, no, we're not that kind of channel. And honestly, I don't think any of us really want to even get involved in the drama. Like, yeah. The close. Well, Commoncraft, the other AI, all of that. Yes, it was shown in episode 8, but there's some aspects there that I'm just going to say, whoop, we're going to pull back on. We're going to pull back on that. Then, if you were to write your own fantasy novel or series, what would it be about? Oh, Starlight, I can already answer that because I've already published a ton of my books. So I've got right next to me, I've got Bleed, Steam, and Steel, which is my steampunk adventure story. No, actually, I'm going to even put them right here. Bleed, Steam, and Steel is my steampunk adventure story. Then we've got Puss in Boots and the Dark Riddles, which is a fairy tale they wrote that is meant to be a continuation of the original Puss in Boots fairy tale, just with a lot of my own spice included. And then also have The White Snake, which is a retelling of one of my personal favorites fairy tales from the Brothers Grimm, about a boy who finds out that the king has been eating snakes for breakfast. He nibbles on one and can start speaking with animals as a result, and the adventure ensues. Then have my flagship series, which is The Legend of the Ten Lords. The Legend of the Ten Lords is currently a 4-book series. It's meant to be 6 once it's all done, and it is a portal fantasy series where imagination is the magic system. Huzzah! You've got 2 characters, Ben and Jessica, who each time when they fall asleep are pulled into a universe of imagination and specifically go to a planet called Hallicruz. A planet where, again, imagination is key. The only problem is that it's right now stuck in the middle of a massive civil war between 10 other people just like them, who are all basically wielding godlike powers. And it is wild, it is crazy, it is big. You then have the Monarch Mercenaries. Make sure I actually can spell my own title right. Autonomy. This is a space adventure story set in the same universe as The Legend of the Ten Lords, but we go to a completely different group of people. These are space pirates who utilize their powers of imagination to steal other people's treasures. And it is basically, the first book is a revenge quest that takes on a completely new dynamic once you start learning more about what's kind of going on. It's basically a massive underdog story of one pirate in particular forcing his crew against their will to help him achieve his revenge against these godlike beings. And what happens when you go so far for revenge that you start putting everyone else on the line and you've been lying to them? That's what Monarch Mercenaries explores right there. I then have my book, A Study in Blood, which is a homage to Murders in the Rue Morgue. And it is it's basically murders in the Rue Morgue, but what if the detectives were wizards? And wizards who can explode, and not in a good way either. So that's A Study in Blood. It is also my most mature book. So I do not recommend it to younger readers at all. Then there is the very first book that I ever wrote. This is ridiculous. Sandwich Desperados. Sandwich Desperados is basically a parody of the Fast and the Furious series, but based in my own experiences as a Jimmy John's delivery driver. So basically you have Jimmy John's delivery drivers, except in this case, they are part of Sammy's Speedy Sandwiches, the fastest sandwich delivery company this side of the Mississippi. And you've got this absolute idiot of a main character who falls in love at first sight with this Mexican chico who comes in to order sandwiches. He wants to impress her. She doesn't want anything to do with him. She says that he should race the Tucson Sidewinder. He says absolutely, having no idea what he's getting himself into. And so all of his buddies at work start helping him train to race in Arizona's most dangerous underground race, which is all based on the real underground racing that used to happen in my home area. It doesn't happen anymore, at least not to the same level that it once was. But it used to be almost every night we would have drag races along the roads near my house. And there was a very, very healthy / unhealthy racing culture in Tucson. And and so Sandwich Desperados is based in that. What is Notice Me Senpai about? Notice Me Senpai. Notice Me Senpai is the one romantic comedy that I've written, which is about a girl named Mindy who has a massive crush on one of the guys in her home ec class. And she's like, I want Raphael to notice me. And her friend, who's an absolute otaku, is all like, you're like those girls who are like, notice me, senpai. Mindy doesn't watch anime. Mindy doesn't get the joke. Mindy literally thinks that she just heard notice me, send pie. Not senpai, send pie. So Mindy goes basically on a personal journey of gaining courage enough to make a special pie that will impress Raphael and make him notice her. And that is what Notice Me Senpai is all about. And it's a very tongue-in-cheek, funny story that I wrote based on my own embarrassing experiences dating or trying to date back in high school, as well as observations of all the poor saps that I taught who were also trying to date while I was a teacher, and a lot of the shenaniganery that they got up to. Darkest Daydream says, a blonde girl named Mindy as a Pokemon fan. I don't know how to feel about that. But yeah. Yep, Mindy is the blonde girl on the front of Notice Me Senpai. My artist for Notice Me Senpai, Nekaru, she's also the artist who did some of the artwork for my cruisy stuff. She's an absolutely amazing artist and definitely worth checking out. Tigerman asks, did you see the Among Us TV series? It was amazing. And Owen Rogers did an amazing job adapting the game so well. It has amazing humor and heart so well. You know, I haven't seen the whole show yet. I did see the first episode, and I was impressed. I didn't think it was going to be as good as it was. Now, I haven't seen the rest of the show, but I was still very impressed. And I've seen a lot of buzz about it online, which is amazing because Among Us is so old. Like it's no longer the big thing that it once was. But there it is. Carol would absolutely force a betrothal. Oh yes, Carol would. Uh, in Deltarune. Guy says, your works look very fun and really engaging. I just write relentlessly nihilistic stuff. You and George R. R. Martin would get along very well together, Guy. At least I hope you guys would. Um, and then Dark Stadium says, I'll talk more about Dragon Rune later, or Dungeon Rune later. Uh, Wait, so who's your cruisy artist, Lars? So let me make sure I actually get the handle on Instagram, because if any of you have Instagram, I would highly recommend checking her out. So Nekaru on Instagram. She's an artist from the Philippines, and just again, really, really good artwork. I've had a blast being able to collaborate with her in the past. So if you wish to check out her other work, there it is. Or at least there's the name on Instagram. If I tried posting a link, I don't know how well it would work. But in any case, my guy says Among Us was already 2 years old at 2020, where it gained insane popularity. Yeah, yeah. Among Us is just so old; it just feels like it wouldn't be popular anymore. But they did a good job with the storytelling, or at least from what I've seen. I was genuinely impressed, and the humor wasn't bad either. So yeah, I need to find a way to be able to watch the entire show because I don't have whatever Paramount's streaming services. Oh, Peacock. I don't have Peacock, so I got to figure out how to. I got to figure out how to get around that in order to watch the rest of it. But yeah, so let's see here. Yeah, who was it? That was it. Oh yeah, it was Starlight. Starlight was the one who asked me about. Asked me if I were to write my own fantasy novel or series, what would it be? So there you've got a lot. There you've got a lot of it, and I'm working on more. I'm right now working on the sequel to Bleed Steam and Steel. I need to prep. I need to do more work to prep Cudgel in the Sack for its publishing, hopefully later this year. And I also forget. How could I forget Tumble Teller? Tumble Teller is probably my most read book to date, which is about basically a troubadour storyteller dragon who goes on her very first solo performance, and she's going to be performing for a mystery client. When she meets him, it turns out that this client is a war hero dragon from the Kingbreakers War, this huge world war that consumed the planet of Draconia, and that war's now done. Why Deathjaw, this dragon, he just kind of vanished. No one knows where he went, but here he is. So Miku Leary, the main character, is like, I'm going to perform for Deathjaw. Oh my gosh! Turns out that the performance for Deathjaw is all a cover for an assassination attempt. And that's a story that I wrote because I was having writer's block for another story set in the same world. And I'm going to finally be writing the first draft in full for that story, which is going to be Whitefire and her Dragonist. So, there's a there you go. Let's see. Guy says it sounds fake, but I remember playing Henry Stickmin and being curious on what other games Innersloth made and finding Among Us, playing and thinking, why is this game not popular? This was right before it did. That's amazing right there, Guy. That's amazing. Comcraft, I have heard people describing the Among Us show as oddly good for what it is. Say, from what I've seen of it so far, yeah, I agree with Guy. It's fairly entertaining. I enjoyed it. And funny, and I actually watched the first episode with my youngest nephew, expecting for him and I to just tear it apart. But like we were totally invested in the episode. And thank you, Starlight. Hey, feel free to check out any of my books, and let me know what you think about them. I will say this: the Monarch Mercenaries is going to get a makeover, and once that actually goes all the way through, I'll do a video explaining why that is. Uh, then guy says I didn't really know what to expect with the concept, but it's pretty good. It's a good time. Yeah, it is a good time. Any whoosins. Okay, so I caught up right there. Went on a little bit of a fun detour. I've got no problem whatsoever doing them fun detours. But let me now see if I can find again this particular. If I can make sure I find this particular video. Uh, it will take. Let's see here. Hi there, honey. My big fat cat. She's coming and she's all like, Lars, I need your attention. So she is being absolutely lovable. And because she's so big, whenever she tries to nuzzle, it's like having a battering ram hit your leg. she's such an absolute chonkers. Funny thing though, I figure out how to post this. I should post this image. She tried to sit herself into egg cartons. It is one of the most ridiculous versions of if I fits, I sits I've ever seen. She tried to nestle down in an egg carton. It was not comfortable, and she eventually got up and left. It was it was absolutely ridiculous. All right, so I gotta trace my way. So in order to get to what I wanted to talk about, the video I wanted to bring up here, I needed to quickly make my way back through. Oh, come on, Anthony Gramuglia. I know that you posted particular. This is annoying when people post things that they then take down. I don't even know why they took. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Okay. Got the video. I'm pulling it on over here for us. Okay. Then Tiagon says I can't help but agree. Like glitch through murder drones, blink and you miss it. Lore hits in Gaslight District ARG. The glitch fan base was set up and primed for theorizing and ARG searching. Starlight asking Dark Stage, does December go missing in this AU as well? Then Conqueror says, and yet when real life images were used for Jack's stress flashbacks in episode 7, Gooseworks was utterly baffled that people thought it was an ARG with the real stuff. Honestly, I feel like Gooseworks is a bit too interactive with people. I agree there. I agree. I think it's so difficult because as a creator, you do want to interact with people. The problem is that Gooseworks got pulled in by people who were not going to interact in good faith. And it was just rough. It was just rough. Okay. But let me now. I'm going to share my screens and make sure that the audio is good here. Okay. All right. So here is this video by Collins Manga Rex. Everybody hates art. Now then, I recommend that people have a look. People check this on out for themselves. Listen to it. See what she's got to say as far as her arguments and everything goes. But one of the things that she brings up is how people, because this isn't, and I'll say this isn't within the context still of the conversation about Glitch and the final act, their performance at the box office. over $37 million. Again, amazing, amazing. Colleen says that our discussions about things like box office, earnings, and the likes are not appropriate. And her argument, like, again, I highly recommend you listen to her video and listen to the whole thing yourself, not just my simple breakdown of it. There's some merit to this because, as she argues, people's art within the context of earnings, their art is devalued down to just simply product to be consumed. That the way that art is supposed to make you feel, the accomplishments of the artist in doing what they do, the skill that must be developed, the connections made that only art can bring, that all of that is devalued when you just simply slap a price tag or a number of success onto it. Now, she puts this primarily in the context of manga, thanks to freaking the Paul brothers now getting involved in manga speculation and manga evaluation. And they're basically these guys are going to try to drive up the prices of manga, specifically for some collector's items. So that way, these idiots can sell it for big bucks and then turn and leave right as everything starts burning down. Because these guys don't really have a creative bone in their body, and they're just here to make money. So she's got a good point to make, and I don't like when people who are not even interested in this kind of stuff like manga come on in because they see a cash cow opportunity, and they start spoiling the enjoyment that people have for the medium or for the art, whatever it is. I see where she's coming from, and I agree with her there. The one thing, though, that she is very disparaging about, why do we work to make money? Why do things need to have a price tag attached to it? And what I have to say is this: I can say this as a writer, as someone who has dedicated now over a decade of his life to pursuing the art of writing, who has been here on YouTube now for a fair bit of time and has now helped to make over 1,000 videos. Like I have interacted with art. I have made art. I have commissioned art. I have done all these kinds of things. And I will say this is that in a utopia, money wouldn't matter. We would all be able to create as we wished, worked as we wished, and everyone would love whatever we make. Or if they didn't like it, they would politely and constructively explain why. Oh, doesn't that sound beautiful? That is what we call a utopia, ladies and gentlemen. Utopias don't exist. Utopias are pipe dreams. I am sorry, but that is the case. Humans cannot create utopias. They just can't. And I speak as a historian who even applauded the Spanish anarchists in probably getting the closest that any human organization on Earth has ever gotten to even accomplishing what we might call a utopia. And even then, it wasn't perfect. And they had massive enemies. If you want to know one of the reasons why the Spanish Civil War was as bad as it was because the communists were so angry at the anarchists for doing communism better than the actual communists that the communists went out of their way to kill the anarchists. That's actual history. And there you go. Utopias don't exist because humans are imperfect, and a utopia is perfect. So how can imperfect beings create something that's perfect? It just doesn't work. Even the Lord of the Rings, my favorite work of all time, it's an imperfect work. As much as I love it, as close as it is to perfection, it's not perfect. So, with that being said, I'm sorry, Colleen, but we live in a world, no matter what your political views are, even no matter which country you might live in, it has a very different system other than just America's brute force capitalism. Money is required to make art work. Even in utopianistic communist societies, even then, money had to be invested to make art happen. Art requires time and resources. In order for art to be sustainable, you need to be able to make money. Now, granted, I will tell you guys this: I am not making a living on my writing or on YouTube. I'm not. As much as that would be amazing, I do not make enough money through my books or through YouTube to sustain myself. I have to work other jobs, and that's just the reality. And I can come whine and complain about that, or I can get on and move. I can get up and move on with my life, which I've decided to do that. Another thing that you have to basically ask yourself is another thing you have to essentially ask yourself is this: are you willing to make these ideas of yours come to life, even if no one, even if no one will ever pick them up? And that was brought through in a very powerful and poignant way to me by Brandon Sanderson. Brandon Sanderson brought up how he had been working on all these different stories. He wanted so badly to be a writer, which he now is. He's one of the most he's now one of the most popular and most successful fantasy authors of the modern era. But when he got started, he was the furthest from that. He didn't know if any of this would ever work, and he felt really depressed. And what he decided for himself was, I just love telling stories. I love creating so much that even if no one picks this up, it is worth it for me to do this. And so he continued writing. And eventually, he found success. Not everyone who continuously works at their craft will find success. That's just the way of the world. It's unfortunate. It can be depressing, especially when it's you who this is happening to. But if you are willing to be a creator because you love creating, because you need to create, because you want to create, because you enjoy it, because you enjoy that relationship between you and your project, that is amazing. And as I've said so many times, you need your stories. Your stories need you, and the world needs your stories. I understand where Colleen's coming from, where that if you just simply work for the money, you will burn yourself out. It will destroy you. And many manga artists and storytellers do get burnt out by just brutal deadlines that just squeeze them of all that they're worth. And I personally don't agree with that. I don't like that. But there are still, even in that brutal work environment, there are plenty of mangaka who still love their work, no matter what happens. There's Yuki Kawaguchi, one of my favorite mangaka. This poor guy, has had every single one of his series shot down, and yet he still keeps on coming. He's great. So and he is in it because he loves the game. He loves creating. He loves manga. And that is so beautiful and inspiring. And this is a guy who's getting brutalized by the manga industry. So, if you as a creator are willing to accept the risks involved because you love what you're doing, then you will do well. If you are too focused on making money, there's other better ways that you will be able to make money. They're just not as fulfilling to the creative soul as pursuing your creative works. But just know that pursuing your creative works doesn't always lead to making good money. So it's rough. Again, I highly encourage checking out Colleen's video, giving it a view, figuring out for yourself what you agree, what you don't agree with when it comes to her arguments. And for me, I felt like what she was saying, because she brought up how people like look at the box office and just they degrade the work to just money. Well, here's one of the things that money tells us. Money tells us how many people went to go see this. How many people were willing to give up of their hard-earned cash in a very tense world economy How many people were willing to make a sacrifice to go and see this? Why? Because they enjoyed it. They enjoyed the show. So that $37 million, when you break it down to anywhere between like $12 to $14 to have you per movie ticket, you can do the math. Well, you find out that that's a lot of people. That's millions of people enjoyed this enough to check it out. And there are millions of people who are excited to have conversations about this show. And so what the money brings to life the numbers. The numbers help us to put into perspective how much of a reach this art has. And that is positive. That's good. Now, what isn't positive, what isn't good, is when fans and others can easily take this way too far and be way too hypercritical about what they're seeing, be way too mean about what they're seeing, and that can very, very easily backfire. And we need to start having, I think, more conversations about proper fan etiquette, proper criticism, how to provide critique. Those are conversations I think we need to have more than ever. And so it it's a process where I think we need to start as creators and fans. We need to start having serious conversations about where we are right now as various societies, where we are in terms of storytelling, what people expect, what people demand, what you are able to give, how you can do it in the most positive way possible. How can you foster good fan interactions? How do we deal with negative fans or with bad fans, really? How can creators accept real criticism? Because that's needed and necessary for you to grow as a storyteller. So there's a lot. There's a much larger conversation I think needs to be had that Colleen is kind of knocking on the door of, but doesn't get into because she's got a chip on her shoulder. She's got to work it on out. But there's a much deeper, far more nuanced conversation that must be had if independent storytelling is to succeed and thrive across a very large spectrum, very wide spectrum, and not just be the realm of success for a handful of creators under Spindle Horse, Iron Circus, and Glitch Productions umbrellas, but rather something that is far more accessible to way more of us. So yeah, that's my take. Like, don't be like, the numbers are important. Celebrate those numbers, but also realize that the numbers are just indicative of much deeper conversations that need to be had. Money is important. Things don't happen without that money, but money should not be the end all be all. We do need to appreciate creative works for what they are. We need to celebrate art. We also need to be willing to take criticism. We need to foster good fan interaction. We need to be able to foster good creator interactions. And that is a very long and hard journey ahead of us, but I think it's one that we can make work. Starlight says money is important, but that should not be your ultimate goal in life. Instead, it is about pursuing what you are passionate about and bringing value to the audience through good stories. Amen. 100% couldn't agree more. Comcraft says this manga stuff reminds me of people joking that My Hero Academia ending where Deku is suggesting Spinner to make a manga as Deku revealing how he was secretly cruel all along, doomed the guy to a fate far worse than anything else done to him. Oof. Guy says, I initially wrote as a form of copying as a kid. My works were just really edgy. Still are, but less middle school flair. Hey, so long as you're improving. Congress says, honestly, personally, I never expected to live off my creative work. Since I was small, my ideal future as a creative always involved me having another job to actually give me money. In introspect, I think I was a bit of a weird kid in that aspect. Oh, not at all. Being realistic. Honestly, if I ever, Starlight says, honestly, if I ever become a famous storyteller, I would try to receive constructive criticism to build good stories and see what works and what needs to be cut out. Also, 100% ignore the haters. And it's definitely about figuring out which ones are the haters and which ones are just trying to give you good criticism. And sometimes the haters actually have something really good to say, even if they didn't intend to say it. It comes down to us as the creators to be able to make good use of what is told to us and learn that when you come across something that's obviously just meant to hate, that you can just learn to shrug it off, that you can develop a thick skin and continue to work with it. Guy says money gets you far, but only so much. But only so much. It's what you do with it and what you can do without it that counts. And I really like that. What you can do with it and what you can do without it, because there's so much that you can do that requires no money or little money that is so fulfilling and so beautiful. And then there's other things that require a lot of money. But even if you have loads of money and even if you do all these great things, you might not necessarily have a great time. I I remember our group's trip to Japan years ago. We went as a large writing group out to Japan, and it was wonderful. I had a great time, but after like a week of being in Japan, some people began to get a little bit grumpy because, well, you're working on a different timeline. You begin to think about the cats and responsibilities, and being so close around other people that you're normally not that all the time around can set certain people on edge. By the end of the trip, some people were getting grumpy. Meanwhile, there was me, and I'm like, I'm in Japan. I just got mauled by I got gored by a sacred deer. I am loving life. Though granted, the getting gored by a deer that actually happened at the beginning of the trip, and that was the number one thing I wanted. I said, I am going to Japan to get gored by a Nara deer, and that's what happened. It hurt, and I loved it. uh, Comcast says the issue I heard time and time again: the fans, consumers, general public, or whatever, they're very good at noticing when there's an issue, but they suck at suggesting solutions. Amen. And people can learn how to become better at giving good solutions and good feedback, even critical, insightful, sometimes cutting feedback, but good feedback nonetheless. Australia says there are a lot of people in the top 1% who are beyond depressed and have shallow, empty lives, while there are those who don't have a lot who have more fulfilling lives. Yes, exactly. Guy says, what was that saying again? In the book of lies, there's some truth, maybe some faint truths in the case, but some truths. And a good lie is one that relies on most of the truth, but has just a cunning twist or two that makes it a lie. And understanding what exactly is wrong. Yes, Concraft, I agree. But yeah, so that is a much, much larger conversation to have in the future, and one that I that needs more than just me pontificating here to make work. I would love to have that conversation with more members of the Harem here live, or even with other creators who aren't part of Camille's Harem. Um, because it is a conversation that we need to have. It's one that needs to start getting going. It's one that needs to continuously go in order to help people improve. All right. So that was basically what I wanted to say in terms of the Amazing Digital Circus in this box office. Good water. Okay. So, guys, because I can feel my voice going, let's hit these next two topics a little bit quickly. If possible, we are going to get to writing complexity. Yes. So, in the video that I did analyzing Hellfire, which I highly recommend that you check out if you haven't already, if anything, for the Spanish Inquisition. And perfectly timed because the Spanish Inquisition just showed up right as I said that. No one expects the Spanish Inquisition. So, one of the things that I did not communicate, I think, clearly enough in that video is, like I said, that Frollo was not originally intended to be a deep character, but that's a little bit misleading. The writers had always intended to make Frollo a complex, interesting, contradictory, thought-provoking character, and they succeed. But first draft Frollo was in no way that Frollo that we see on the screen. In order to discover the monster that haunts the Hunchback of Notre Dame, Frollo had to go through a lot of work to get there. Now, what I should have communicated a whole lot better is that the writers did not intend to have all 7 deadly sins portrayed in one scene. They didn't, and it was not even something that they themselves consciously did. So Frollo is most known for depicting lust during his song Hellfire, where he's just all like, "Oh, then tell me, Maria, why I see her dancing there, why her smoldering eyes still scorch my soul," as he's like hugging himself and wiping her shawl all over himself, and it's just all so freaking creepy. Uh, it's very clear that he is lusting after Esmeralda. But as I point out in that video, we see the elements of greed, of pride, wrath, sloth, envy, and even gluttony are all there to be seen in the scene Hellfire. Now, the reason why it's like that, even though the writers themselves did not intend it, is because they wrote a complex, sinful, contradictory character like Frollo. And this is where writing complexity is an interesting journey. Because I will tell you this, nearly half of the things that you see or that you will see and hear from people who read and interact or interact with or watch your stories, half of the stuff that you will hear from them are things that you did not even intend. But by golly, it works. It actually connects. And you're like, oh, I see that. Okay. and so a lot of the complexity that comes across in so many works is the complexity that comes out from the interpretation of the audience as they interact with your story. What allows them to be able to have those kinds of interpretations, interactions, comes down to you doing your absolute best to make your story as good as possible and your characters as real and engaging as possible. Or maybe not even real, but real within the context of your story. And I'll even actually provide an example I just came across today of someone reviewing my book, Please Stephen Steele. And I was like, I didn't think about it that way. But that's actually a really interesting thought that works for one of my characters. Before I get to that, let me quickly catch up right here. Why bite the hand that feeds? Exactly. Congress, hey, Lars, have you seen care of creators losing control? Have you seen care of creators losing complete control over their work in the hands of the fans? Like I've seen in case of web novels where the part of the fans like the most was the one the author seemingly had very little interest in and wanted to show as little as possible. To the point that the fandom took off and went did their own thing in fanfics, and the fanfics replaced canon 90% of the modern fans, and fandom remains alive and growing, even almost a decade after the web novel ended. That would be Gravity Falls. Yes, I have seen that happen. And that it can be frustrating for the creator, but in a way, it can also be a good thing because that means that the fans are just getting really, really active and creative. I look at you, Maury Mark. But yeah, that also, though, depends on exactly what they're getting really interested in because sometimes they might get interested in some of the more questionable stuff within the story, and that's a little bit yikes. So it says Azrael and Des were engaged before the Lars' disappearance, which is what led to the betrothal of Chris and Noel. Frollo can get bent. Oh, and Frollo does get bent. He gets bent out of his mind and thrust down into hell. Guy says, Hellfire is so brilliant. The opening is so great. Beata Maria, you know I am a righteous man. Of my virtue I am justly proud. Such a great line, sets it up perfectly. It does. It's Frollo was such a Pharisee in all the worst ways. Charlie says Hunchback of Notre Dame is my favorite villain. I really like how Frollo is just an irredeemable villain while still being three-dimensional. There are so many layers to unpack. Exactly. The best art is made unintentionally. It is. Some of the best art, you're like, I never intended for this to be the case, but it actually works. So let me then bring up what. So I just saw this today. I was like, oh, I didn't know that there was this particular review. So there's a review for my book Bleed Steam and Steel on Goodreads that was just uploaded not even a month ago. And so we get this breakdown of the characters in my book and everything. And towards the end of this particular review, I'll get to where I was like, huh, I never actually thought of this, and I'm the writer. So this story, Bleed Seam and Steel, that this is a story that is sci-fi, dystopian, and steampunk with a splash of fantasy. We actually don't truly see the fantasy part until part 2 of the book. The background world building has an event known as the Shattering, creating the lands, islands, and cultures that are presented in the story. This is a multi-POV story of flawed yet strong characters who have all been shaped by their cultures, their choices, viewing an event, and what it means through those experiences. Asuka comes from a culture that has essentially cut themselves off from the rest of the world, but is looking for an adventure before she is locked into other family obligations that will take over her life. Wesley is a war-hardened man who is trying to follow orders but finds himself at a crossroads. That is putting it very lightly. Lagertha is fighting her head and her heart with knowledge against faith while trying to figure out what she is meant to do. Now, this is the one where I was like, this is an interesting interpretation. Zemon is actively torn between his reality and the illusions he creates, even the ones he creates for himself to hide behind, while trying to uncover the secrets against his king and home. Now, when I saw that sentence, I was all like, that's interesting, because I myself never saw Zemon as torn between reality and illusions. He's a spy, and he's a crippled spy at that. He's in a wheelchair in a Victorian setting. In a Victorian setting, people who were scarred, who were maimed, who had disabilities were shunned, were supposed to be kept out of the spotlight. Well, here you have a young man who's a nobleman, who's crippled from the waist down, who's a spy. And he knows that people look down on him for being a cripple. So he uses that to craft a perception of himself to feed to the world of, don't pay any attention to Zemon. He's a drunk and an idiot, and he just always rolls around where people don't want him to be. Because people just view him as a simpleton drunk, they talk in front of him. And because they talk, Zemon, as a spy, can gather all that information and then utilize it in his profession to try to protect the kingdom. Now, the interesting thing is that because throughout the book, Zemon he knows he knows his mask and he knows his reality. And so I myself never saw him as someone who was torn between reality and illusions. However, that's actually an apt description for him, because he falls in love with Celestine, this foreign lady who comes to the city of London, and he falls for her. And as he tries now to balance suddenly an element of his life that he never thought he would have, this beautiful young lady who's in love with him, is a life as a spy and trying to convince everyone that he's a dumb drunk. He has to juggle all of these things, and it puts him into a very, very strange situation. And so it works. It's not what I myself intended as the author, but I can see where this reader is coming from. And I do like that interpretation. So it's not necessarily something that I myself wrote. That was never something that was intended, but it's an interpretation that works with the story. And so that's one of the things that we have to accept as writers when it comes to complexity is that when we ourselves write, when we are writing our stories, there are going to be layers that we never intended that will work their way into these stories. And on top of that, there will be layers that will be interpreted, that interpretation or a argument for will be thrust upon these stories of ours and our characters because of the way that others interact with what we have made. And that is the nature of writing, of complexity. So much of the complexity that we ourselves would love to see in a story, or that we love to see in stories, was never fully intended. It just got in there as the writer did their best to make the story work. So, as a writer, do your best to make a story work. Do not give yourself a headache about trying to have 20 different layers of complexity to a story. And the writers for The Hunchback of Notre Dame were not looking to include all seven deadly sins into the scene Hellfire. They were just trying to make a really, really good music number. And they succeeded with a good three-dimensional villainous character. As a result, the interpretation of the seven deadly sins can be easily placed upon that scene, providing a greater depth of meaning and enjoyment for those who wish to see it that way. So that's what we've got playing out here. Hope that that makes sense. I know that's going high-minded, philosophical when it comes to writing and all, but uh, that is a truth for writing that needs to be accepted. Do not batter your brains by trying to be overly complex. Just write good stories, and the complexity will naturally filter in. Common Craft bringing up how fans got really angry with one of the creators. In this case, the author hated that and tried to write a spin-off and sequel, where the spin-off was created with the sole purpose of messing with the fans in very mean ways. Like the spin-off was a quest, a story where the readers vote to choose what the MC will do in the next chapter. So basically, a choose your own adventure story. It had the idea that the fans had a popular idea of I could have done better with a certain character. The author came up with this quest where the readers do exactly that, take the place of the character in a very similar situation where the author would intentionally troll and misdirect the readers to prove that they could not have done better than in canon, to the point that he secretly had the antagonist be controlled by the other people he knew in real life, and those people could see the readers' discussions and choices, but the readers went unaware of any of that. This whole mess made most of the fandom lose pretty much all respect for the author. Basically, the author had straight up lied and tricked the readers with that quest. The author also had a bad habit of joining fan discussion and using Word of God to make it so it was impossible for anything to go different from canon. Well, now that just sounds like a messy situation, and honestly, everyone is culpable in that particular situation. Maybe mostly the author for creating the first place, but really everyone participated. Everyone made it what it was. If you want choose your own adventure stories, look up an actual choose your own adventure story, make your own. You can follow along with our choose your own horror adventure stories every Halloween. There you go. Getting an audience that gets immersed like that must feel like an honor. It absolutely is. It says, I feel like I want to work with pretty complicated concepts, yet only seem to drive them forward in a simple way. Nothing wrong with that. Simplicity is actually sometimes the best way of conveying complex thoughts. Starlight says, I'm not entirely sure where I want to go with Dessa's story in Dungeon Rune yet. However, I can say that that interest in the betrothal is one-sided on Noelle's part. Sounds like some drama right there. Although it's less of her having a crush on Chris and more of her being happy that she doesn't have to marry a complete stranger. Which, in terms of betrothals, that is a big win-win. Just going to say that. Guy says, one of my works I named one of my characters my IRL name, and I had him kicked in the nuts. My favorite plot device. Oh, oof. Sounds like it hurts. Honestly, from my AU, I have gotten an idea where Chris Dreamer leaves their kingdom to find December, who abandoned her kingdom due to Carol, and meet Susie and Rosie along the way. Interesting concept. Ba-ba-da-ba-da-ba-bum. Anyways, okay, so that's effectively what I wanted to say in terms of writing complexity. So let's see here. Last thing then to do for the evening is talk about scene management. Taking another drink of water right there. Okay, so scene management was the topic of of our latest writing lesson, which utilized the Pirates of the Caribbean as basically a case study to better understand how you can manage your scenes. Basically, the basic question had come months ago from ISO, asking, how do you know when to end a scene and how do you end it? And honestly, great questions right there. So in the writing lesson that I posted yesterday, I talked about how all scenes that you write or all chapters that you write must have goals. You must know what you wish to accomplish with them. Even if you're a garden/discovery writer, meaning that you're someone who just you discover your story as you go along, which is fun, fine, and beautiful. But even you need to know, okay, then this is kind of what I'm looking for, what I'm aiming to do with this particular chapter, with this particular scene. So that way you then know when you've done it, when you've managed it, when you've hit it, when you've had that success. Because if you don't know, you might end up going way longer with that scene than you really needed to, or you might actually maybe cut off the scene too early and rob yourself of fantastic potential to tell your story to its fullest, to its best. And so in order to really kind of break this down further, I thought that maybe you could then, for this final part of our live stream tonight, people could bring up some ideas that they have for their own stories, such as like, I want to be able to try to accomplish this. What should I then do in certain scenes? Or that we can bring up specific scenes from Pirates of the Caribbean and break down why those scenes work so well. Because honestly, Pirates of the Caribbean has some of the best scene management of any modern story that I have ever seen. It is, even though it's a longer movie, it is so incredibly tight and focused, and it packs so dang much into its runtime that honestly, if other people today were to try to do the Pirates of the Caribbean, and even see this with later Pirates of the Caribbean movies, they just get sloppy. They don't really go anywhere. They waste their runtime. The first movie, everything is on point, exact, does what it needs to do. Every scene works in conjunction to tell its own individual part of the story, but work together to move the whole story forward in just such a beautiful, fulfilling way. So it'd be neat then for us to break that down further, or to talk a little bit more about your own stories. So I kind of leave that on up to you guys, what you would like to do. Should we talk a little bit more about Pirates of the Caribbean specific scenes? You want to talk about your own stories? Like, let me know where exactly you want this to go. And in the meantime, we got Comcraft responding to Starlight. Interesting. I've been making the beginning of Dungeon Rune more similar to the original game. At first, after hearing the prophecy, Susie bolts out of the dark world. Comcraft says, I think the first clue to how things would eventually end up was that he wrote a story of a genre he wasn't really familiar with and struck gold seemingly by accident. Then would do things like when he got annoyed with fans theorizing and joking about a minor character that he had retired. So the author went and rewrote the character into dying off screen in a disaster. I also just remember there was that mess where with the author using the fact that the novel was hosted on his own website to edit other people's comments about a certain theory he had changed his mind on. Yeah, see, that's just dumb. That's just dumb right there. That's creating his own mess. And that's just dumb. Well, like I feel as an author, once you've created your story and you put it on out there, it's out there. And if you're going to change stuff, you got to let people know you're changing it. Just like I let you guys know, I am going to be kind of doing a makeover for Monarch Mercenaries because it kind of needs it. Guy says, whenever I need a plot device, I just have a character with my name as the sacrifice. How glorious. Dark says, fearing for the security of the Empire, Carol initially dispatches just Susie to deal with the tyrants. However, after Chris and Ralsei insist on joining the quest, Carol sends them too. Bum, bum, bum. All right. But yeah, so I caught up with what you guys are saying right there. What do you guys want? Should we actually continue on this discussion with scene management, or are you guys fine? Say, let me know. Say you gotta let me know so that way I know exactly where I should steer the ship for the remainder of our time. Guy says, once your work is out there, that's it. It's just not yours anymore. Exactly. I absolutely agree with that. George James says other party members include, for their story, Noel, who's stowed away in the party's wagon somehow, Lancer overthrows King's authority, and Birdley, who gets lost in the big city and finds the fun gang later. Starlight says, Camille, for my fanfic, how would you enhance the human-monster conflict without being a repeat of Deltarune? So we had, we actually had a member who used to be a little bit more on our Discord and here also for our live streams, do their own Undertale fanfic that kind of tried to explore why exactly the humans and the monsters might not have gotten along, and they introduced a different conflict, and it was that humans and monsters had gotten along really, really well, but political shenaniganery led to assassinations and distrust that then naturally just shredded what the actual goodwill between these different groups had been, and that's what brought down the unity and the good society, the good high life of monsters and humans living together. So it had been basically a political marriage going wrong. And so, I mean, that's something that you could do in terms of enhancing the conflict. Honestly, I think that a way that you can enhance it is by actually going back into the roots of why people don't like others. Like think about it here for a moment. Isn't it dumb and silly that things like racism actually exist in the world? Like, let's just be honest. People are people. Once you get to know people, you realize people are people. Doesn't matter how big, how small, skin color, what food they eat, what language they speak, where they come from. Why is it then that people don't like other people? Why do we create paradigms that allow us to hate others? A lot of it comes down to fear. And interestingly enough, when you start boiling it down, it's not always fear of other people that sparks the greatest hatred. It's the fear of your own people that begins to channel that hatred. One of the why you hate a certain amount of people when you can hate everyone. Well, I'll give a historical example. Racism in the United States had its origins in wealthy landowners during the colonial period fearing the fact that the Irish and the Scottish and poor British, along with other poor nationalities that immigrated on over to the Americas, found commonality with black slaves. Initially, they did, because poor and poor alike, whether slave or free, were just like, man, everything being owned by these power hungry landowners just sucks. We came to the new world for a new chance. Dang it. And it's like for the Africans, all like, we didn't have a choice. We got dragged on over here, and the white people were like, okay, yeah, sure, that sucks. But you know what? We're all just being oppressed. We're all oppressed. And the landowners got really scared that if given enough time, all of these other people, all these white folk, would find sympathy with the slaves, unite with the slaves, and disrupt a system that allowed them to mightily profit. They were scared of losing power. They were scared of their own people, of what their own people might do. And so they encouraged a hatred that wasn't inherently there in the beginning. And they encouraged this hatred of white versus black. And it just became ingrained over time to the point where it became systemic. So thinking then about hatred between monsters and humans, what if, and this can come from either side. Any side is capable of intense prejudice, of intense hatred. So it could be from both the humans and the monsters. Maybe it's from just the monsters. Maybe it's from just the humans. Who knows? It comes down to what you wish to do. But that you have what you have is that those in power, or those who fear to lose power, or those who fear to lose the status quo, or those who fear to lose the perception of the world that they love so much, find a reason to turn the others into villains. So let's say within a world of humans, monsters like Deltarune or Undertale, though Deltarune itself, as far as we can tell, there's peace between humans and monsters. It's Undertale where that peace is lost. But if you want to create animosity between humans and monsters in a Deltarune setting, what you could do, and I know this sounds super silly and dumb, but you could have it where humans begin to fear that monsters, with their greater strength, with their odd capabilities, could take away their jobs. And I know that sounds dumb and everything, because it sounds way too on the nose for real world events and real world fears. But I mean, if you're just a normal human, imagine if you're just a normal human, suddenly all these monsters show up. And you know what? You might actually get along really, really well with those monsters. But then there's other people who are like, oh my gosh, those octopus monsters. They can literally do just about anything. They can work on several projects all at once, and there's no way that we can keep up. And oh my gosh, I just don't like them. All the pucks on all these monsters. And then people are like, I like those monsters. Then they have to create a reason why they should hate those monsters. If it's monsters hating on the humans, it could very well be that, I mean, we've got this diversity of monsters. The monsters intermingle in actually, an interesting thing is that in Deltarune and in Undertale, we actually don't see much monster intermingling as far as anyone is aware of. Now, imagine if the monsters actually really pride themselves on, how we got our goat families, we got our reindeer families, we got our no-arm families, we got our snowy families, the clans, these monster clans. We've over the eons, we've come to learn how to live in peace with each other, and we have this equilibrium. Suddenly, you add humans into the mix, and because humans, oh boy, those monsters. If anime has anything to teach us, humans will find ways of getting monsters to dance the mattress mumbo with them. And so suddenly the monsters are all like, none of this. Our monster purity has lasted for eons across all of these different conflicts and these peace treaties between the different clans. And now here come these humans, overpaid, oversexed, and over here. We don't want them. And so they can start creating all different kinds of stories about how about how humans will make life miserable for monsters, how they will corrupt the notion of family, they will corrupt purity, they bring chaos and all of this. And so the monsters create, because certain monsters are afraid of what the introduction of humans to their society could do to their society. They come up with a reason then a reason based within their own history to find out or to create a reason why monsters should hate humans. So that's what I would suggest in terms of being able to enhance the animosity between the two. Ask yourself why, honestly, realistically, they would not like the other side, and then how they would come up with a justification, even maybe a silly one, and how that then kind of gets spun out over time. Because prejudice and racism, they just don't happen. I'm sorry. I've read so many books where people are like, racism is inbred. If you had a racist family member, you have inherited this racist gene. And I'm like, that is what we call pseudoscience. That doesn't work that way. If it really worked that way, you would not have instances all over the world where babies, where toddlers, who are of very different backgrounds and skin colors, get along with each other. It's because it is not inherited by blood. It's something that is unfortunately taught by way too many people to way too many others. And so that is where prejudice, that's where hatred and animosity comes from. It's something that's fed to other people. It's taught, it's learned. And it comes out of a desire to make people hate others for a specific reason. And usually it has to do with gaining power or with maintaining the status quo. So you ask yourself this, is this hatred based on power, or is this hatred based on making things stay the same? So that's very general. It gets a little bit real world, but honestly, some of the best inspiration comes from asking those more real world questions and then pulling inspiration from that and then twisting it to fit your fantasy or fictional situation. Excuse me. Alrighty. Starlight says, wait, I was thinking perhaps Christopher could be an outsider despite being adopted into the monster family. They were bullied by monsters, and only Noelle and December are friends. I like that. Conqueror says, and in Undertale, the reason all the mess was because the monsters being able to absorb human souls. Yes, the power, the power. Fabio says, with Undertale, I always think about monsters casually using bullet patterns to express themselves creates real possibility that various humans refuse to believe that it wasn't just being done to hurt them. I can see that. And that can be how the first cases of prejudice came up. Dark Sage Dream says, Chris and Susie going to have to evade the monster purists. Oh, yes, they will. Yeah, Cruzy's got some real hurdles to climb. Guy says, humanity, as terrifyingly ugly as it is breathtakingly beautiful. Once again, amen, 100%. So, Starlight, I hope that provides some direction right there. Again, it's your story, so you figure out what works best for you. But it's a place to begin. Hopefully, it gives you some thoughts, even if you don't use anything. You don't have to use anything that I've said, but hopefully, it gets some of the cogs already spinning and grinds up those wonderful creative juices. It says, like before discovering the soul thing. Yes, I see what you're saying. Alrighty. Take another drink of water right there. Okay, well, since we haven't had any requests to do scene management, I think that we'll then forego that. And plus, we've been here now for about 2.5 hours. It is almost 10:30 where I am at. As I said earlier, my voice is beginning to go a little bit, so I think we'll start wrapping things up here. Conquer says, that reminds me of how in Worlds Without Number, certain races having certain traits is a bad thing. Very interesting. Fabio says, I was interested. Well, Fabio, you got to give me something to work with. Otherwise, I don't exactly know where to go. That's that do be the problem. right there. As Sherlock once said, data, data, data. I cannot make bricks without clay. Oh man, I love the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes movies. So dang good, so good. Uh, so guys says until next time, then Lars. Yeah, I think we'll start. Uh, Dark Agent says, I was going to request scene management, but please take care of yourself first, Lars. Well, definitely. Here's the thing: we can definitely talk about that again in the next for the next live stream, because I've been hoping that we might be able to get others from the Harem to show up for that particular discussion, and unfortunately, we just couldn't get. Nate was interested in hopping on, but he had responsibilities because he's a dad, so we will absolutely forgive him for that. So maybe we'll then shoot for that particular discussion next week, and I think we might have I think we might then have some good fun with that. But let's see here, things to look forward to next week. Oh, wait a second, next week wouldn't happen next week because next week we're going to have the embargo for the Amazing Digital Circus final act is going to come on down. We're going to have a lot to discuss. So it won't be happening next week. So look forward to that. I'm going to try to have the Gameoverse, my Gameoverse review out before then, because I'm excited to get into that. Also, keep your eyes peeled for when I release this week's review for the 3 episodes of Gravity Falls, keeping in line with the canon events of the show thus far. We'll be looking at Headhunters, The Hand That Rocks the Mabel, and The Inconveniencing. And I hope to bring some interesting insight to those episodes, because going back through them again, I've noticed some stuff that I didn't earlier, and especially now as a writer, I'm like, interesting choice there, Alex. Very interesting choice. So I hope to have that out for you guys here real soon. And then in less than 2 weeks' time, we'll be looking at Deltarune, Chapter 5. My intention is to do a live playthrough of the chapter as soon as possible and try to crank that out as quickly as I can. Just that way we can all have a good time with it, and we'll see how things go. But everyone, thank you so much for joining me tonight for this live stream, especially since it went a little bit later than usual. And thank you as well for your discussions, for your inputs, for your comments, everything. I absolutely loved it. You all are great. And until the next video, y'all, juice.